The next story was inspired by the image below. Of course, we don't want to disclose the image just yet, so please stay tuned to the end of the story to see what this story was inspired by. That being said, please enjoy our Simpsons Halloween special. The last year I ever went trick-or-treating would forever traumatize me to this day. It started out when my friends and I decided to dress up as the Simpson characters, which was always good for the candy haul. I went as Bart because of my spiky hair. My best friend was Milhouse because he naturally wore glasses. Our other friends went as Ralph since he was a bit chubby, and the other went as Nelson since he had buck teeth. Everything about the night started off like normal, with the exception of the fact that the whole neighborhood seemed to be just a little dead, and not in a spooky way either. For that reason, we weren't able to collect as much candy as we'd hoped for. After a couple hours of roaming through our neighborhood, we started to get the feeling that we'd hit just about every house. Things seemed to be wrapping up early as a lot of the last houses that we walked by started turning off their lights. Then, when we weren't too far from getting back to where I lived, we came across a small, dingy, rundown house, which was the only house in the neighborhood with their porch lights on. The house didn't have any decorations other than a for sale sign on the front lawn. That's when I asked, "So are we gonna hit up this house or just call it a night? As much as I'd like to beef up this lousy sack, I'm not sure I'm trying to deal with him." "Who? Oh shit." I hadn't noticed him at first, but once I did, I couldn't look away. Beneath the porch light stood a man standing in the shadow just behind the threshold. He was dressed as Krusty the Clown, and somehow more deranged looking than the real thing. Out of all the clowns he could have been, he had to be the one clown from The Simpsons, which made it all seem that much stranger. When he was sure he had our full attention, he held his hand out towards us and curled his finger, beckoning us closer. Of course, none of us were in the mood to take even a single step forward.
"Isn't it getting a little late? Shouldn't your sacks have a little more candy than that by now? Obviously, you're not very good trick-or-treaters if you won't even come to my door. You're not scared, are you?"
"No way, man, we're not scared. This whole neighborhood is just so empty and lame."
"Yeah, and everyone's being all stingy this year. Don't take us for a bunch of wimps, you weirdo. Call me what you want, you little punks, but one thing I'm not is stingy."
Then, from just inside the house, the clown grabbed 2 huge bags stuffed full of candy and hurled them out into the yard. The candy spilled out onto the ground before us, creating a display we couldn't resist.
"Whoa, look at that! That's more than all of our candy combined."
We were so distracted by the horde of candy that in the very next moment, that crazed clown was rushing towards us and getting in our faces, grabbing at us and shoving handfuls of his candy into our bags.
"Go ahead, take it. It's all yours. What do you say, huh? I've been looking to move out of this crummy town for a while now, and I'd love a little help clearing house."
"Get away from me, man!" We backed off as quickly as we could and made a bit of space between us and him.
"Well, what are you waiting for? I gave you some candy. Why don't you try some of it?"
"Nah, I think I've got a few more houses to hit before I can stop for the night. Thanks, though."
"Wait, I'll give you more candy than this whole neighborhood. I just want to see you try it."
"I told you, man, I'm good."
"I said eat the candy, you snotty little twerp. How about you learn to respect your elders, huh?"
I could remember shitting bricks when I saw my other 2 friends shovel as much of this creep's candy into their bags while he was focused on me. But it wasn't long before Krusty looked behind the 2 of them in the process of robbing him blind. He immediately let go of me and pushed me to the ground, and while he screamed in rage, he unsheathed a machete from his oversized clown pants. We all moved to scatter as I threw my bag of candy at him. The clown instinctively took a large swing of the machete and the bag split open, exploding with a shower of little candy wrappers. I had enough time to find my footing and started sprinting, but Krusty was close behind. He chased us all down the street, screaming and waving his machete at us the whole time, despite being slowed by the elongated clown shoes he was wearing, which forced him to run with exaggerated movements. He was fast and kept at it for a while. Eventually, we made a quick stop and hid in the bushes by some random house. remember seeing him sprint past us as we held in our breath for dear life. We waited until the coast was clear, in which we slinked out and snuck back to my house. However, we still didn't feel safe. I realized that the house we saw Krusty at was just a few doors down from mine, and after the chase, we were all on edge. All of my friends managed to keep their candy sacks, while I was left empty-handed. I made a quick call to my dad and told him the situation, in which he said he'd be home immediately. After that, we all just sat in the dark, awaiting my dad's arrival. There was shouting coming from the other side, and the pounding only became louder. Somebody was screaming, demanding to be let in, but none of us could even dare to move. We all knew it meant that the insane clown had somehow found us. Then, the door gave in and flew open. We all screamed in terror, but soon realized that we were being hysterical. It was only my dad coming home far sooner than I anticipated. He said he forgot his key at the party he just left and thought we were all being attacked. We all had a good laugh, and I apologized for not opening the door and causing him to break it down. Then, just to be safe, he drove all of my friends back to their houses. I was pretty out of it by then, but I remember seeing an abnormal number of ambulances in the neighborhood on my way home, like something had happened on every block. We didn't want to linger outdoors any further, so when we came home, we chained up the door and went to sleep. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up to my phone blowing up with calls and texts from my friends' phone numbers, but their family members were the ones using their phones. All 3 of them had been rushed to the hospital around the same time, and all 3 for the same reason. The candy that we got from that lunatic was allegedly filled with sharp objects, in which my friends had all consumed. 2 of them managed to make it out with just a few internal lacerations, but my best friend wasn't able to. He died in the hospital that night, and to make matters worse, the house he had given candy at wasn't even his. He'd been using that vacant for sale house to lure multiple trick-or-treaters that night. Here is the alleged photograph from a trick-or-treater that found a sharp object in his candy. The victim has since reported the shocking revelations to law enforcement. Unfortunately, the individual responsible for the heinous crime has since remained at large.
The next story featured on our Simpsons Halloween special was inspired by this disturbing clip of a clown holding a free hug sign. The individual in the vehicle appears to be filming the clown as he cautiously puts his vehicle in reverse while trying to capture as much as he can in this deserted road. There's no telling why one would intentionally dress up just to terrorize oncoming patrons in the area, but we can only speculate such a thing. The next story was inspired by this horrifying footage. Last summer, I moved towns as usual. My parents can never manage to stay in one place for more than a year. They're a bunch of worthless drunks that had me by accident, so they just tow me around while they circle the drain. Because of them, I can never keep any friends even if I do make some, and my biggest dream is just to be able to leave them in the dust when I turn 18. I don't even care where I go, as long as it's away from them. The last place they moved into was this dingy, cramped one-bedroom apartment in the middle of a huge apartment compound. By the time Halloween came around, I was just about ready to run away. I decided to go trick-or-treating on my own, since my parents never cared enough about me to give me a curfew or anything. They went off to their own party and left me alone, so what else was I going to do? I put together my usual low-effort costume, just a beanie, a skull shirt, and a pair of Converse to go with my already long hair and big teeth. And just like that, I was Jimbo Jones from The Simpsons once again. There wasn't any trick-or-treating going on in the maze of apartments I was living in, so I took a bus and walked a few miles out to some more upscale neighborhood. That's where I decided to start hitting houses. It's always the suburbs with the big houses that have the most candy. However, it wasn't long before I started to notice something was wrong. The whole neighborhood was dead as dead gets. There wasn't a single light on over anyone's front door. and none of the yards I walked past had any Halloween decorations. And when I took a chance and knocked on somebody's door, it didn't go very well. Who the hell are you? Trick or treat! Psst. Did you get your costume at H&M? Do you get a discount on shampoo?
Get the hell off my property, you little maggot! I bet your mom likes them bald in old age!
I walked on and tried to find a better prospect, but I still didn't have any luck. I didn't even see a single person out on the street. I started second-guessing myself, thinking maybe it wasn't even October 31st at all, that I was just so stupid that I thought it was Halloween. But I checked my phone and it was indeed October 31st. It didn't look like Halloween, but the environment I was in was definitely giving me the creeps. I felt like I was the last man standing in a humanity-ending apocalypse. There weren't even cars out on the street. I expected to round a corner and see one turned over and burning down, but that's not what I saw. I reached the end of the neighborhood and saw the border of this thick forest preserve. And standing right at the edge was this kid that looked exactly like Bart Simpson. Well, as much as any real person can look like Bart Simpson. He was just smiling eerily, while holding this raggedy cardboard sign that said free hugs. The kid looked pretty rough too, but he was the first person I'd seen out on the street all night, so I had to go up and talk to him. Hey man, where is everybody? The kid didn't respond with anything except a gaunt stare and a creepy smile. Dude, it's Halloween, right? Do you know where all the trick-or-treaters are? Again, the kid didn't say anything. But then something bizarre caught my eye. The kid started crying. That's when I realized that his eyes were horribly bloodshot, and the tears streaming from his eyes were not clear but bloody. But what made this all the more disturbing was how he remained smiling, not moving a single face muscle. My heart started racing all of a sudden, and then he opened his arms and stared at me. I was terrified, but I could tell all he wanted was a hug, so I reluctantly obliged him. I cautiously leaned over and wrapped my arms around him. While we were hugging, he whispered in my ear, "Make sure you get your free hugs from everyone else too, or else." I broke free and jumped back. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Or else what? Again, the kid said nothing, but he began to start laughing. The way he was laughing really freaked me out. I was panicking, and while I wasn't thinking straight, I ran away, straight into the forest preserve. I honestly don't know what I was thinking running into there. I regretted it instantly. I wasn't running long before I ran into somebody else. Some poor girl that looked exactly like Lisa Simpson. She was also smiling and holding a free hug sign. I stopped running and approached her with caution. Hey, little girl, are you okay? Do you need any help? Should I call the cops or something? The poor little girl had the exact same bloodshot eyes as the boy I had seen before. Again, I could see a bloody stream of tears down her face as she smiled at me menacingly. The girl then asks,
"Would you like a free hug?"
Hell no! What is wrong with you? What do you and your idiot friend think you're doing standing around in the forest begging for free hugs? Somebody could hurt you!
That wasn't very smart, Jimbo.
What? What are you talking about? Speak up! Trick or treat! Ah! I immediately jerked around and looked behind me, just to see a large clown standing over me. A man that looked exactly like Krusty the Clown. Would you like to know why people don't trick-or-treat around this side of town? Before I could even react, he threw a pillowcase over my face and began to forcefully drag me into the deep ends of the woods. I screamed and flailed my arms around, in hopes that someone could hear my cries for help and rescue me. After about a solid minute of sheer terror, I managed to kick him in the balls, which gave me enough time to break free and make a run for it. I ran back the way I came, heading for the glimmer of streetlights ahead of me, in hopes of reaching a residential area. I could hear that clown laughing his head off behind me, but when I looked over my shoulder to see how close he was, I tripped over a log like an idiot. In an instant, the clown jumped on top of me and pinned me down, saying, "You should have taken the free hugs, twerp! Happy Halloween!"
Dude, where the hell are all the trick-or-treaters? This area is lame as hell. I don't know, maybe we should walk a little further down. Honestly, I'm about to call it a night. Hey, look, it's Jimbo from The Simpsons. Let's go mess with him. That free hug sign is definitely a nice touch to the costume, all right.
The next story isn't exactly a Halloween story, but we figured we'd include it, since it is quite the bone chiller. The footage is quite eerie, so we'd figure we'd make a dramatized version of the alleged occurrence, with also the full video at the end so you can see what really happened. I've been living with my parents for the last couple of years, and to take care of them I searched for occupations online until I stumbled upon a cleaning job at a warehouse. It was a night shift, but I was so pumped to start working that I immediately grabbed the opportunity. As soon as I arrived, I met a strange-looking man with a bald head, a beard, and a bulging stomach. He introduced himself to me as my employer, only asking me for my name and age. Then, that was it. After that, I was instantly given an assignment. The only task given to me was down in the basement. Meanwhile, an odd guy with headphones over his ears, whom I assume I would be working alongside with, was assigned to clean up the first floor. He began sweeping it, his eyes fixated on the dirty spots, without taking so much as a glance. And so, I politely told my boss,
I don't mind working in the basement, sir, but is it okay if I swap with my colleague?
His eyebrows furrowed as he scanned me from head to toe and said,
Who's the boss around here? You or me? Complaints on the first day?
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to.
If you're here to give me a rough time, you can enjoy working on OnlyFans while I give the job to someone else.
Who is that guy anyway?
Annoyed by my queries, my boss replied,
Look, you're not here to socialize. You're here to work. So the only thing you should know is that you can ignore him. He doesn't like talking to people.
Seeing that I couldn't persuade him, I threw in the towel. There was so much to do, so I didn't have time to worry about anything else. Then, before I knew it, my shift was over and it was time to head home. As I approached the vehicle in the wee hours of the morning, the deafening silence surrounding me gave me chills, and it felt like someone was watching me from the shadows.
It's been an exhausting day.
I told myself to regain composure. Then, without looking back, I entered and started the car. Seconds later, someone appeared at the window, startling me. Soon, I noticed it was the creepy guy, still wearing his headphones as he had his hands pressed against the glass, staring at me with vacant eyes and a creepy-ass smile. I remembered my boss telling me never to converse with him, and so, instead of reprimanding him for the jump scare, I made haste until I finally arrived home. But the next day, the thought of him approaching the car out of nowhere still boggled me. Then, as I went back to work, I noticed that all the cans and boxes I had properly arranged last night were scattered across the floor.
What the hell?
I reacted, but instead of grumbling to my boss, I decided to save time by simply putting them back on the shelves. And then, moments later, I could hear a voice calling out my name. When I turned to look, I saw a section of the room engulfed in darkness. I shook my head, convincing myself it was nothing. Again, however, I heard the same voice mention my name in a low, ominous tone. I was so mad that I went upstairs to speak with my boss, telling him that the creepy guy wearing headphones was up to no good and that he was responsible for the prank. My boss shrugged it off and asked me to take a 10-minute break before going back to work. Then, while enjoying a hamburger sandwich, I heard my boss scream with heavy steps moving towards me.
How dare you! I'm not paying you to loaf around, you freeloading hoe!
Bewildered, I stood up and asked,
But I only did as you instructed.
Grab the broom, you witch! Hurry the hell up!
Unable to contain his anger, he dragged me down to the basement, where everything was in disarray once again.
What? I already cleaned this shit!
Enough!
My boss said with gritted teeth, and as his face turned red, he added,
Listen to me carefully, because I'll only say this once. I'll let you fix this, but if I find anything out of place before you end today's shift, you're fired!
I gulped, nervous but determined to prove myself to him. Then, after my boss climbed the stairs, I felt the same presence that haunted me moments earlier, and when I looked into the darkness, I saw what appeared to be a creepy-looking figure, smiling menacingly while clawing at the door frame. I stood stood rigidly, my entire body unable to move. Then, moments later, a pair of round, sinister eyes glared at me with malevolent intent. I mustered the strength to holler. However, for reasons unknown, my voice was inaudible. Moments later, cans and boxes from one of the shelves dropped to the ground, and when I picked them up, a powerful force yanked my feet, dragging me across the floor and into the abyss. I couldn't see what was pulling me toward the darkness, but I did everything I could to break free. And when I did, I ran upstairs and cried for help from the one colleague I had to avoid, the guy wearing headphones. For the first time, he removed them as he listened to me intently. Then, he told me to cool down by the security room. Since I couldn't find our boss anywhere, I waited for him to join me, where we watched the surveillance footage. When I asked about our boss, my colleague looked utterly confused and asked me to show him which advertisement led me to find this job. When I pointed to the old man in the picture, all the blood drained from his face, and what he told me sent shivers down my spine. I discovered that our current boss was a young man in his 30s who was on vacation, and that the old one from the ads had long passed away. It was alleged that he had a bad reputation for dragging his employees out of the warehouse whenever they slacked around. This was the main reason the guy wearing headphones worked so diligently without speaking to anyone else. This is the true story of the time I worked at a warehouse and encountered a real-life ghost.
Who's the boss around here? You or me? Complaints on the first day?
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to.
If you're here to give me a rough time, you can enjoy working on OnlyFans while I give the job to someone else.